It began as a story of quiet patience and silent observation, a tale that no one in the community could have imagined would end the way it did. In the heart of a suburban development, surrounded by freshly paved streets and brand-new homes, one man held a secret more powerful than any homeowner association rule, more binding than any fine, and more permanent than any piece of paper filed in haste. He held the deed, the real deed, to the very land beneath those 96 homes. Welcome to HOA Crimes and Punishments, where we uncover shocking stories of power, control, and ultimate justice. When the first bulldozers arrived, nobody questioned anything. The HOA had partnered with a development firm, promising a new community expansion, more homes, and more profits. The neighborhood was buzzing with excitement. Construction meant progress, and progress meant money. But beneath that surface of confidence was a mistake so enormous it bordered on arrogance. The HOA had built on land that was never theirs to begin with. The story begins several years earlier. The land, once considered useless marshland, had been quietly purchased by a retired surveyor. He had spent his life studying property lines, reading deeds, and understanding the intricate web of ownership that most people overlook. He bought the land not for development, but for legacy. When he watched the HOA's construction begin, he knew something was wrong. Yet, instead of rushing to stop them, he watched. He waited. He documented everything. The HOA's board was confident and proud. They boasted about the new homes, the increased property values, and the growing prestige of their community. But the one thing they never did was double-check the legal boundary lines. The development company had relied on outdated records, while the county clerk's office had yet to update its digital mapping. On paper, it looked legitimate. But in the real world, they were building on land that didn't belong to them. Month by month, the construction continued. Concrete foundations poured, walls rose, roofs went up. The sound of progress echoed through the area, and the man with the deed, the true owner, watched it all unfold from a quiet distance. His neighbors thought he was simply a curious bystander, perhaps nostalgic for the old days. None of them knew he was recording every truck that entered, every fence that was installed, every permit that was filed without his consent. Then came the turning point. One day, he received a letter from the HOA. It accused him of trespassing on property belonging to the association. The irony was astonishing. The very people who had invaded his land were now threatening to fine him for walking across it. The letter claimed he had violated HOA boundaries, and if he didn't comply, legal action would follow. He smiled as he folded the paper, placed it in a folder, and added it to the growing pile of evidence. The clock had started ticking. Weeks later, construction on the 96th home was completed. The community threw a small celebration. New residents moved in, the HOA increased dues, and everyone praised the success of the expansion. But one man remained silent, calm, and calculating. He had everything he needed: satellite photos, dated construction permits, HOA correspondence, tax receipts, and the original property deed signed, sealed, and verified by the county. When the HOA's attorney filed a routine motion to claim final ownership rights over the development area, the true owner made his move. He filed a counterclaim with the court, attaching copies of his deed and a detailed record of every building erected on his property without authorization. The courthouse clerks were stunned. 96 homes built illegally on privately owned land. It was a legal earthquake. The first hearing was chaos. The HOA board members arrived with confidence, armed with lawyers and thick binders. They expected a simple challenge, maybe a boundary dispute at most. But as the true owner presented his evidence, the mood shifted dramatically. The courtroom fell silent as the judge examined the deed, a deed older and more valid than any claim the HOA could make. The judge asked the HOA's counsel a simple question. Did you obtain the landowner's consent before construction began? The lawyer hesitated. The silence stretched, and in that pause, the entire illusion collapsed. Witnesses were called: surveyors, contractors, and even county officials. Every testimony revealed another layer of negligence. The HOA had bypassed multiple steps, assuming ownership that was never legally theirs. They had filed permits using incorrect parcel numbers, forged minor details to accelerate approvals, and ignored the most fundamental principle of real estate: ownership. The true owner never raised his voice. He didn't need to. Every document, every photo, and every timeline entry spoke louder than words. His calm presence contrasted sharply with the panicked whispers of the HOA members. They had spent millions on construction, landscaping, and advertising, and now it all stood on someone else's land. When the court finally ruled, the decision was absolute. The judge declared that all 96 homes were built illegally and that the legal ownership of the land, and by extension everything on it, belonged to the man who held the deed. Gasps filled the courtroom. The HOA's representatives sat frozen. The homeowners in attendance were in disbelief, realizing their dream homes were now in legal limbo. But the true owner did not seek to destroy anyone's life. Instead, he offered a resolution that stunned the court. He announced that he would not demand eviction or demolition. Instead, he would negotiate new land use terms directly with the residents, bypassing the HOA entirely. The board that had mocked him, fined him, and accused him of trespassing was now powerless. The irony was poetic. The man they tried to silence became the only person who could save their homes. Over the following months, legal settlements unfolded. The HOA faced massive lawsuits from residents, the development company went bankrupt, and several board members resigned under pressure. The man, however, maintained his composure throughout. He didn't act out of revenge, but out of principle. He wanted accountability, not destruction. His calm patience had turned arrogance into humility, power into weakness, and lies into lessons. The community eventually rebuilt itself, not through fear and control, but through mutual respect and understanding. And the man with the deed became a quiet legend, the one who let them finish and then took back what was rightfully his. This story is not just about land or law. It's about the consequences of greed, negligence, and unchecked authority. It's a lesson in patience and justice, a reminder that sometimes the most powerful move you can make is to wait until the right moment to act. In a world where HOAs often believe they are untouchable, this story serves as a warning. Power, when abused, collapses under the weight of truth. And truth, when armed with patience, always wins. The legal aftermath was monumental. News outlets covered the case, calling it one of the most expensive HOA mistakes in recent history. The State Attorney General's office launched an investigation into permit fraud, and several local officials faced disciplinary action for approving the false paperwork. The entire real estate community took notice. Property boundaries were rechecked, deeds re-verified, and developers began hiring additional legal teams just to avoid repeating such a disaster. Meanwhile, the man returned to his quiet life. He didn't appear in interviews or give speeches. He simply continued living on the same land that others had once tried to claim as their own. The 96 homes now stood as a monument to the cost of arrogance and the power of patience. For the homeowners who stayed, life went on, but with a newfound respect for the truth. They paid fair land use fees directly to the rightful owner and learned to appreciate that real ownership is not defined by association rules, but by integrity and law. This case also shifted how courts across the country began viewing HOA authority. Judges grew more cautious about HOA overreach, emphasizing the importance of verifying ownership before enforcing control. Legal textbooks began referencing the case as a prime example of how procedural shortcuts and corporate arrogance can backfire spectacularly. And, through it all, one truth stood unshaken. The law protects those who know their rights, not those who assume them. In the end, this isn't just a story of one man versus an HOA. It's a story of truth versus power, law versus arrogance, and justice versus manipulation. It reminds us that patience can be the sharpest weapon, and silence can be the most powerful statement. If you enjoyed this unbelievable HOA story, Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to HOA Crimes and Punishments, and share it with friends who love true justice stories.